Hey folks, this is Rhykker with the Diablo 3 patch 2.7 season 23 Barbarian build guide. This guide will be for the popular Wrath of the Wastes whirlrend Barbarian, which is the best Barbarian build in the game for pretty much everything. Now, this build is not new, but patch 2.7 brought in a massive follower overhaul, so now we have a new factor to take into our builds, so we have to update our old guides. We'll also present in this video a speed variant of the build. So you can go from pushing Greater Rifts to speed running Greater Rifts to farm experience. So in this video, we'll go over the gear, the skills, the follower, and the playstyle that you need to rock this build. The gameplay footage you're seeing was recorded by top player and maxroll.gg content lead Rob. And you can also reference the written version of this guide on maxroll.gg, also written by Rob. So let's dive right in, and it all begins with the Wrath of the Waste set. The 2-piece bonus increases the damage per second of Rend by 500% and its duration to 15 seconds. Rend will actually be our damage dealer in this build. Whirlwind is our method of locomotion. It's our means of moving everywhere, but also of delivering Rends for damage. The 4-piece bonus. During Whirlwind and for 3 seconds after, you gain 50% damage reduction, and your applied Rends deal triple damage. And then lastly, the 6-piece bonus. Whirlwind gains the effect of the Dust Devil's rune, and all Whirlwind and Rend damage is increased by 10,000%. The rest of our items will be built around buffing our Rend damage. People sometimes ask, hey, why don't we take a Skull Grasp ring? Why don't we buff Whirlwind damage? It is inconsequential next to Rend damage. We want to, in general, in Diablo 3, focus on buffing one single skill. Spreading out your damage is generally suboptimal. The damage of Whirlwind will be nothing compared to the damage of Rend. So speaking of, we're going to want to work into this build the Lamentation Belt. Rend can now stack up to 2 times on an enemy, and the damage of Rend is increased by 150%. We also need an Ambo's Pride one-handed mighty weapon. Attacking with Whirlwind applies Rend, and the total damage of Rend is dealt over 1 second. So just whirlwinding will be passively applying Rend. For the Greater Rift pushing version of this build, we're going to put that Ambo's Pride in our cube, because for our weapons, we're taking Little Rogue and Slanderer Istvan set. Every time you spend primary resource, gain 6% increased attack speed, damage, and armor for 5 seconds. This effect stacks up to 5 times. That is 30% increased attack speed, damage, and armor. Terrific buff. Also in our cube, we're going to take a Mantle of Channeling. While channeling Whirlwind, all damage is increased by 25%, and you take 25% less damage. We'll always be channeling, so we'll always have this. We'll also take in the cube an Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. Reduces the remaining cooldown of one of your skills by 1 second when you hit with a resource spending attack. This will help us with our uptime on Wrath of the Berserker. Big, powerful Uber form buff. We'll be taking a Band of Might. Powerful defensive item. After casting Furious Charge, Ground Stomp, or Leap, take 80% reduced damage for 8 seconds. You want to play around this, you want to make sure you always have this buff up. Next, we'll take a Convention of Elements. You're going to rotate through different elements. You'll have a different damage window for 4 seconds in every element. This build is a physical build, so ideally, during your physical damage window, you want to be maximizing the amount of damage you're dealing, but this build isn't as contingent on a rotation as others, so I know a lot of people don't like managing the convention rotation. In this particular build, it's not absolutely critical. Of course, if you want to maximize your damage though, try to be mindful of that rotation. Next, we'll take Mortix Brace Bracer. Wrath of the Berserker gains the effect of every rune. Nice little buff. And then lastly, we're going to take a Hellfire Amulet. Now, historically, we've been using some of the new and improved amulets here. Namely, for the pushing build, we would have used the Flavor of Time. However, with the follower update, we can now put that Flavor of Time on the follower and still have it emanate to us, benefit from it. So instead, we're going to the classic Hellfire. The Barbarian has a lot of good passives, so we're going to squeeze in a 5th passive with the Hellfire Amulet. Now we'll go over exactly what we want on every piece of gear. Now we'll go over exactly what we want on every piece of gear, but first a look at the skills. For our skills, we're starting with the star of the show, Rend Bloodbath. We're picking the Bloodbath rune here because basically enemies that die to Rend will effectively spread Rend to other nearby enemies. So basically Bloodbath gives us extra procs of Rend. Next we're going to take Whirlwind Wind Shear. Again, Whirlwind is just a vehicle here. The Wind Shear rune makes us gain 1 Fury for every enemy struck. This really helps with our Fury management. As long as we're whirlwinding through enemies, we should never run out of Fury. Next we're taking Wrath of the Berserker. Rune doesn't matter because thanks to our Mortix Brace Bracers, we get all the runes. This gives us more crit chance, attack speed, dodge chance, and move speed just at its base unruned version. The Insanity rune gives us 50% increased damage, Striding Giant gives us 50% damage reduction, and Thrive on Chaos gives us life per fury spent. So there are some other runes, but they don't really do anything. We're gonna try to have 100% uptime on this buff. Next we'll take Ground Stomp Wrenching Smash. We're taking this for a couple of reasons. First off, to trigger our Band of Might, we want to be stomping at least once every 8 seconds to maintain our buff of Band of Might. If we don't have that, we lose so much survivability. With Wrenching Smash, we are pulling enemies in, and this is going to help with our Rends. So, ideally, right before you're going to manually apply Rend, we'll explain that in a moment, you're going to want to pull them in with Ground Stomp Wrenching Smash. Alright, now we said that Rend will be applied automatically while whirlwinding due to your Ambo's Pride. This is true, but remember in Diablo 3, procs don't proc procs. In other words, area damage will not be triggered off of a triggered effect. So, when you manually cast Rend, area damage on your gear will apply, but the Rends that are auto-casted by your Ambo's Pride will not be applying area damage. Now for speedruns this is not terribly important, but when you are pushing Beta Rifts in order to deal extra damage, you will be rending manually in the midst of whirlwinding. But you want to be doing that once you've properly grouped up your enemies and you're in your convention rotation. We'll discuss this a little bit more when we get to gameplay. We're taking Ancient Spear Rage Flip. This is purely a control power to help with grouping. At high greater rifts, when monsters take long to kill, again, you do big area damage, but you want to group enemies together. You want to pull elites along with you. So you're going to be using Ancient Spear Rage Flip to strategically aim at and bring monsters close in so that they are within your big area damage window. And you can even be pulling monsters along with you as you're going through a map, because once it's taking really long to kill enemies, you're not going to just kill like 5 enemies together and then move on and kill another 5 enemies together. You're going to want to just go around the map and herd enemies into one giant glob of soon-to-be dead monsters. And then lastly, we'll take Battle Rage Swords to Plowshares. Battle Rage gives us a nice offensive buff, crit chance, raw damage, and Swords to Plowshares makes crits heal us and our pets for a chunk of life, so we want to be critting a lot in order to be passively healing. For our passives, we're going to want to take Rampage. Increases your strength by 1% for 8 seconds after killing or assisting in killing an enemy, stacks up to 25 times, that's 25% more strength. Strength means damage and it also means toughness. Excellent buff. Nerves of Steel. This is our free life passive. Brawler. As long as there are 3 enemies within 12 yards, all your damage is increased by 20%, all the more reason to be grouping enemies together. Ruthless. You deal 40% additional damage to enemies below 30% health. This helps us finish off stragglers. We're really good at big area damage. The fewer monsters there are on screen, the weaker we become. Ruthless helps us finish off those monsters that are left at the end of a fight. They'll help finish off the Rift Guardian. And then our 5th passive, and we'll clarify here, it doesn't matter which passive rolls on the Hellfire Amulet, just try to get these 5 passives in total. Berserker Rage. You deal 25% additional damage while near maximum fury, and thanks to that rune on Whirlwind, Wind Shear, we're going to be pretty much constantly near max fury. So again, that playstyle, you're going to pop into a map, you're going to pop on your buffs, you're going to ground stomp in order to put up your defensive Band of Might buff, then you're going to whirlwind around. Don't start trying to kill things, just start trying to group enemies together into a big group while maintaining your buffs. Then, when you feel you've got a nice sizable group, you've been using your Ancient Spear to pull enemies in, once you got a nice big group of enemies, then you start bringing down the death, you're going to ground stomp them. And then, ideally, right before your physical rotation on your Convention of Elements, because it's while you're in that physical that you're going to start manually applying rends, and you're going to alternate rend, whirlwind, rend, whirlwind, rend, whirlwind, because you don't want to lose your whirlwind buffs. Your Mantle of Channeling will persist for about 1 second after you stop whirlwinding, so you don't want to lose the 25% extra damage and 25% damage reduction. Now let's go over exactly what we want on every piece of gear. For your shoulders, cooldown, rend damage, area damage, all resist. For your helm, strength, vitality, crit chance, and a diamond for cooldown. For our amulet, physical damage, crit chance, crit damage. Gloves, area damage, cooldown, crit chance, crit damage. For our chest, strength, rend, all resist. You'll notice that we're taking more all resist than we are vitality. This is so that we benefit more from our healing. If you compare two pools of toughness, I have 1 million toughness, you have 1 million toughness. Imagine if my toughness comes only from vitality and I have no all resist, just hypothetical scenario, and yours is 50-50. If we are both healed for the same amount, you're benefiting significantly more from the heal than I am, because you have less health overall, so that heal you're getting represents a greater fraction of your health. And for our pants and chest, the sockets, if you want more toughness, diamonds. If you want more damage, rubies. For our bracers, physical damage, strength, vitality, crit chance. Belt, strength, vitality, life, all resist. For our Convention of Elements, crit chance, crit damage, area damage. For our Band of Might, crit chance, crit damage, area damage. Pants, strength, vitality, all resist. Boots, strength, vitality, all resist, and armor. And for both of our weapons, strength, cooldown, area damage. For our legendary gems, we're taking a Teguk. This will give us 8% increased damage for 1.5 seconds when you spend resource on a channeled skill, stacks up to 10 times, and you gain 2% increased armor for every stack. This will be very easy for us to maintain with Whirlwind. We'll also take a Bane of the Trapped, arguably the best legendary gem in the game, huge amount more damage to enemies that we're attacking. And then lastly, Bane of the Stricken. This build really suffers against single target. Bane of the Stricken is very important when you're pushing to take out that Rift Guardian. Each attack you make against an enemy increases the damage it takes from your attacks by 2.3%, and you gain 25% increased damage against bosses and Rift Guardians. For our follower, we're going to take the Templar to help keep us alive. So for his skill setup, we're taking Heal. This is on a 30-second cooldown. However, this will actually benefit from cooldown reduction. Not all follower powers do that. This one does. And this is another reason why we want most of our toughness to be coming from all resist to better benefit from this heal. Next, we'll take Loyalty for that passive life regen. Same reason. Next, we're going to take Onslaught. The amount of damage he deals with this is irrelevant. Followers don't deal damage, but it'll cause enemies to take 10% increased damage for 3 seconds. This does benefit us. And then lastly, we're going to take Guardian. When you take fatal damage, the Templar will effectively save you. Now, as for his gear, we're going to give him the Immortality Relic, the Enchanting Favor. We'll give him a Flavor of Time. Pylon effects last twice as long. This could make or break a Greater Rift. We would normally be wearing this, but now we don't have to. This effect will emanate to us. We're going to give him Nemesis Bracers. Shrines will spawn an enemy champion. More enemy champions, more progression. We're going to give him an Oculus Ring. Chance to create an area-focused power on killing a monster. If you stand in this Golden Puddle, you will deal up to 85% more damage. We'll give him Ice Climbers to make him immune to freeze and immobilize effects. For his weapon, a Thunder Fury. Lightning damage that can apply some crowd control. For his other ring, you can either go with a Unity or a Weirdward. Now, a Unity is only if you are also wearing a Unity. If you want that extra toughness, you drop the Convention of Elements, you pop on a Unity, this will double your toughness, so long as your follower also has one, plus the Invulnerability Relic. Otherwise, with a Weirdward, you have a chance for lightning damage to trigger crowd control with your Thunder Fury. Belt and pants will be kept in Crimsons in order to benefit from the 20% cooldown reduction that again will benefit our heal skill. Similarly, a Leoric's crown with a diamond in it for more cooldown reduction for our follower. We'll give him some homing pads so that if you ever want to teleport out, you can do so without being interrupted. This will emanate to us. Not critically important, however. Although if you are hardcore, then yes, critically important. Gloves don't matter. There's no good follower item for gloves for Greater Rifts. And for the chest piece, we'll go with a Tall Rashas for that attack speed that rolls as a primary affix. For the offhand, you can take anything, or you can go with a Freeze of Deflection if you want extra crowd control. As for what stats you want on every piece of gear, the first and foremost, most important will be strength. You want to stack as much strength as possible on your follower. All of his abilities scale off of strength. After that, cooldown reduction is your number 2 priority in order to get that heal as often as possible. And then lastly, attack speed in order to get him to activate his powers as quickly as possible. All right, that covers the pushing variant. Now let's quickly go over the speed Greater Rift variant. For farming up your paragons, farming up your legendary gems, what do we change? Well, first off, we're going to drop the Convention of Elements and the Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. We're going to put the Band of Might in our cube and actually equip a Focus and Restraint ring set, the Bastion of Will. When you hit with a resource generating attack or primary skill, deal 50% increased damage for 5 seconds. When you hit with a resource spending attack, i.e. Whirlwind, deal 50% increased damage for 5 seconds. These combine to give us more than double our damage. We're going to actually drop out the Istvan set and instead equip our Ambo's Pride plus an Ingam. Your skill cooldowns are reduced by 10 seconds for 15 seconds after killing an elite pack. When you're speedrunning, you're going so fast, you're going to really benefit from the Ingam. This weapon is common in speedrunning setups. Because our follower will have Nemesis Bracers, we should be encountering elite packs often enough and spawning them often enough to be frequently benefiting from the Ingam. It's because of this that we can afford to drop the Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. So in our cube, we'll instead take a Furnace. Increases damage against elites by 50%. Again, this build suffers against single target. This will help with that. We'll also be swapping out our Hellfire Amulet for a Squirt's Necklace. While not taking damage, your damage dealt is increased by up to 100%. And damage taken is increased by up to 50. So double damage as long as we're not taking damage, which can be quite difficult to do. So we're actually dropping our Bane of the Stricken, which is never for speedruns. Bane of the Stricken is never good for speedruns. Instead, we're taking a Molten Wildebeest's Gizzard in order to get that secondary effect. After not taking damage for 4 seconds, gain an Absorb Shield for 200% of your total life per second. So we're trying to have that Absorb Shield keep us in our Squirt's window all the time and just kill stuff so fast that we're not taking enough damage to drop it. We're actually going to drop Battle Rage, and we're going to take instead Sprint Marathon to go even faster to help with our speedrunning. This will increase our movement speed by 40% for 4 seconds. We no longer need Ancient Spear Rage Flip because we're not focused on grouping enemies anymore. We're just killing everything as quickly as possible. So we're going to take instead Ignore Pain Bravado, 50% damage reduction, and 40% increased move speed to zoom even faster. For this build, we're not going to be manually rending. We're just going to be whirlwinding now. We're also dropping Ground Stomp because we don't need to be grouping enemies. Instead, to sustain our Band of Might, we're taking Furious Charge, Merciless Assault. We'll want to be charging at least once every 5 seconds. It's once every 8 seconds for the Band of Might, but for Focus and Restraint, it's once every 5 seconds. This will be our generator. That'll maintain our damage buff. For our passives, we're swapping out Brawler and instead taking Boon of Bulkathos to reduce the cooldown of Wrath of the Berserker by 30 seconds. Again, we want to try to maintain 100% uptime on that. And we're going to drop out Ruthless and instead take Pound of Flesh. When you are healed by a health globe, gain 2% life regen and 4% increased move speed. This is to make us go even faster. Now, what you want on every piece of gear is mostly the same except drop area damage. You don't need it because you're not manually casting Rend. As for your follower, we're going to take the Enchantress for the extra cooldown. However, we are not giving her the invulnerability token. We are doing speed runs. We're trying to keep the Greater Rifts low enough that she's going to stay alive, and we're going to try to make efforts to keep her alive. So we're going to give her the Hand of the Prophet token that grants access to all of her skills. So she'll be giving us cooldown reduction, elemental damage, reduced damage from ranged attacks, armor, attack speed, and a cheat death passive. Her gearing is mostly the same: Flavor of Time, Nemesis Bracers, Ice Climbers, Homing Pads, Oculus Ring, Talrasha's Chest, but for our gloves and pants, we're going to take the Cane set. This will give her a bit more attack speed and give us a little bit of experience. We benefit a little bit from experience from our followers. To that end, she's still taking a Leoric's Crown, but putting a ruby in there for that little bit of XP buff. For her ring, we'll go for a Hellfire ring that you can craft. This will be for, again, a little bit more XP. For her weapon, we're going with a Pig Sticker for its high attack speed, plus it is a stat stick. It rolls with an extra property, and again, we need to load her up with affixes to keep her alive. A follower's damage is always irrelevant, even in speedruns, so the gem in the socket is an Amethyst for more life per hit. So attacking quickly plus life per hit will help keep her alive. We're giving her 2 legendary gems that followers benefit from: Esoteric Alteration and Mutilation Guard to help keep her alive, give her some defensive buffs. Then all the other sockets will be topazes for more intelligence. Followers benefit more from stats than we do. So load her up with, first and foremost, intelligence, then vitality, then life percent, then armor, then all resist, then life per hit, then attack speed. Those are your gearing priorities on her gear to try to keep her alive as much as possible. Now, as for our paragon points across both versions of the build, first off, you're going to max out your move speed. Then you could put into vitality up until you have about 500,000 to 800,000 life, then dump into strength. For offense, crit chance first, then crit damage, then cooldown reduction, then attack speed. For defense, all resist, life, armor, life regen. For utility, area damage, pickup radius, resource cost reduction, and life per hit. Of course, if you're swapping between the speedrunning variant and the pushing variant, and you want to go as far as to adjusting your paragon between the two, then don't take area damage when you are on your speedrunning build. And that's gonna wrap up this guide. But do be sure to check out our tier list video on the best builds of Season 23, and check out our speed leveling video in order to get a quick start when the season launches on April 2nd. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.